how can I understand native speakers? I have been studying this language for years and I'm still not able to understand native speakers when they speak. So can you help me? This is a very interesting question, and what I would like to do today is to assess whether you really need to understand native speakers. Because while I think it is important in certain cases, I think the importance of this is a bit overestimated, and there are certain cases where you may not actually even be interested in wasting a lot of your time and energy in trying to understand native speakers, especially if it's not with them that you are going to do your interaction in the language. And I know that's intriguing, but let's get down to it and you will see what I mean. Unfortunately, there are a lot of gurus out there who are using this as a bait to make you buy the programs. They will tell you that if you follow their program, then you will be able to understand native speakers. And they're really selling you this as if understanding native speakers was the ultimate yardstick for learning a language. If you understand native speakers, you've managed, you've got there. You've got that level that allows you to just understand everything they say without effort. And this makes me laugh because even I struggle sometimes to understand native speakers in my mother tongue. So that would be an amazing method if they actually helped people to not struggle understanding in a foreign language. And I have seen, again, a lot of students who have enrolled in these kind of programs, and then they have come to me like, well, but I did the program and I'm still not able to understand the native speakers like I was promised. And I'm not even talking about just the students. I can talk about myself, how I've lived for years in English-speaking countries and now in French-speaking countries as well. And I can guarantee on a daily basis, there are things I don't understand when natives speak. And it's actually sometimes frustrating and surprising for the other speakers who hear me speak and they really think I'm very fluent. And when I actually don't understand something, they genuinely think I'm joking. Like I was recently said by this lady who I had to ask like 3 times because I could not understand what she was saying. And she said, oh, but you're joking, aren't you? You're actually understanding and just pretending. So I had to explain, I could literally not understand what she was saying. Which, again, as embarrassing as it is something very natural when you speak several languages that you have not actually grown up with. I'm not saying that understanding native speakers isn't important. And eventually, if you're gonna want to live in the country or to work or to interact with native speakers, you do need to understand what they're saying. But don't think that anyone will be able to understand absolutely 100% everything of what native speakers say, because it's much more complex than that. The first thing that you need to remember when you're learning a language is that while understanding native speakers might be important, communication is more important. And think, for example, in your native language. Would you say you're able to understand every single speaker that speaks your native language? I guess it really depends on what your native language is. In my case, it's Spanish. And of course, as you know, Spanish is spoken in a lot of countries around the world in many different varieties and with many different accents. For me, saying I understand Spanish perfectly, I think is just normal, like it's obvious. But it does not mean I understand all native speakers out there. For example, when I hang out with friends from South America, sometimes it's just extremely difficult to understand what they're saying. Sometimes when you're in the middle of a conversation and they start speaking really fast and using a bit of the accent of their region or of their country and start using expressions that we are not familiar with in Spain, I can guarantee the level of effort I have to put into the conversation to understand what they are saying. For me, it's very similar to the level of effort I need when I'm trying to understand native speakers, for example, in English or in French. So I think there needs to be a bit of demystification of what really means to understand native speakers. And the goal has to be on communication. I usually say to my students, as long as you can communicate, it doesn't matter if you don't understand 100%. Did you understand the key message? If there were an action that has to be taken, did you understand what the action is? That is really what matters, is the communication, is not every single word in the sentence. And then the second thing you need to consider here are your purposes. What's your goal in learning the language? For what purpose are you learning it? And this question I'm asking for all of you who are learning English and who are very frustrated because you cannot understand native speakers of English. You have to remember English is a special case. English right now is a lingua franca, is an international language. And the immense majority of people that speak English, it's more non-native speakers using English as an additional language than native speakers. Your chances of ending up speaking in English to people who are non-native speakers is actually higher than speaking to native speakers. That does not mean you should totally ignore native speakers, but going back to the purposes and to the role of English, I think you have to be very clear. If the reason why you want to learn English is to communicate with other people who are non-native speakers, it may be the case that you don't actually need so much to understand native speakers, as much as you just need to understand people speaking in English in general. When I moved back to Europe, I was shocked working at international organizations and companies and hearing all these people with extremely thick foreign accents. And yet they're working for some of the top companies in the world and they manage to communicate. I don't think if they were put in the UK, and I'm not speaking about a small village outside of Glasgow, I'm talking somewhere near London with a fairly neutral accent, I can guarantee most of these people would not be able to understand more than maybe 50-60% of what native speakers are saying. And however, they are extremely able communicators in English. So, to what extent do you need to invest your time and your energy trying to acquire something that, depending on your purposes, may not actually make a big difference? Now, I hope this helped open a little bit your eyes as to why it may not be so important that you understand native speakers. Because again, I think this is a big myth that it's very much marketing, how it's sold. And if you still manage to have successful communication, then understanding every single native speaker and everything they say may not be so important, even if I know personally that it is frustrating. But we have to just accept the limitations that we've got. Now, let me know what you think. Let me know if this was useful. I've got plenty of different content related to language learning coming up very soon. And of course, if you've got any comments or any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention, and I shall see you in the next episode.